Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Suisuki. Coming up.
For them to then, after winning as an independent candidate, that needs to be got rid of.
Have Solomon Island voters been misled? Also,
having a dengue outbreak around this time of the year isn't actually that unusual over the last 5 years.
Pacific countries are cautious of further infections and
the excitement is building. People are running around just doing last-minute things.
The 676 will host its first Super Rugby game this weekend. The head of Transparency Solomon Islands says the country's weak political party legislation is skewing voters' choices. Almost half of the incumbent MPs who contested last month's national election lost their seats, and only 15 out of more than 30 candidates fielded by the dominant party in the last governments were returned. Many of the newly elected MPs, particularly those that ran as independents, campaign on platforms to change the government or be an alternative voice in the House. But Transparency Chief Executive Ruth Lilokula says these same politicians, some of whom unseated incumbent government MPs, are now aligning themselves with a coalition which will effectively return the former government to power. Ruth Lilokula told Koroi Hawkins they have effectively misled their voters.
Most of the campaign is to change the government, to make a change to, they have had enough of our party and they're going to make a change. And of course, when you see the number of winning candidates of our party, they fielded more than 40 candidates, but they did not give them the vote. But they gave a lot of vote to other political parties as well as a number of the independent candidates. And none of them said that they were joining any party. In fact, they were saying that they're not interested in joining parties because all parties leaders do is criticize each other and they don't want to be going into parliament and doing that. So that too was some of the things that were reported to us or we got to hear about in the work that we do pre-election, during election and post.
Now, we are as we're speaking, we're on the eve of the election of the Prime Minister. The process, I think, is a bit confusing for external observers of the Solomon Islands election. Right now we have the coalition that's loosely resembling the former government, with Jeremiah Manele at the head of that. On the other side, the coalition resembling the former opposition with Matthew Wale at the head of that. The numbers game. The Manele coalition claiming 28, Wale's coalition claiming 20 at the moment, with a few missing in between. Can you explain the numbers game in this period as we await the election of the Prime Minister?
The numbers game will continue until after today, until the election of the Prime Minister. It does happen all the time, and this is where you will see that what is the numbers game dependent on? Is it to serve the needs of this country or is it for the personal gain of those who are playing this game? So for us, for me and for Transparency Solomon Islands, this is not the time to do this numbers game. They should all work together to bring up this country's economy so that we can be going somewhere. But wanting to be Prime Minister, this is some of the things that we have seen with this thing that is going on. It's all about the position of Prime Minister, to who should be the Prime Minister, and the number of parties that we have. We should have worked together well before the election to decide on for the better of this country. But this happens. Previously, money talks to move them around. At the moment, we don't know if money talks or if they are moving. Some of them are saying that they are praying to God and they are comfortable with their move and all of this. So, again, it's this independent group that is in our constitution that needs to change so that the independent group is removed and people can still stand as an independent but not be able to form a group after they have won as an independent, like it is happening at the moment. So when you really look at it, there are three groups after we elect the Prime Minister. You have the executive government, you have then the opposition, and then you have the independent group whose office is also paid for by public funds. So we need to do lots more. All of us need to do lots more to strengthen this political party system in our country, and also that seeing what it has caused, the problem that it has caused this country with regard to independent group, they should work together to get rid of that, amend the constitution, get rid of that, and do away with the independent group in our constitution, so that this instability and this kind of numbers game that we are having now, caused by the existence of this independent group.
And so by that you mean that the freedom of movement out of the, even though you stand as an independent, when you get in, the freedom to move into a political party and bolster numbers?
Yes, that kind of movement is what I refer to as the destabilizing factor in our political, with regard to our political stability. And they can fix it if they have a heart for this country and have a heart for people. Freedom for anyone to stand as an independent candidate, that still stays. But for them to then, after winning as an independent candidate, then they come together and form a group. That is what needs to be got rid of from within our constitution.
Kiribati's first president, Sir Yeremia Tambai, says the decision by the government to deport Judge David Lambourne from the country is a farce. Last Thursday night, Parliament voted to accept the decision of a tribunal set up by the government to investigate aspects of Mr. Lambourne's work. It concluded that he had failed to deliver a judgment in a timely fashion. A statement from the Office of President Tanis Mamau said Mr. Lambourne is being deported for his misbehaviours. Sir Yeremia, who's an opposition MP, told Don Wiseman the allegations were trumped up by the government.
Our view is that it's a farce. The whole thing is designed by governments to ensure that David will have to be deported and so on. Because if you read the report, the real reasons, or rather the allocations to the tribunal, were trumped up by the government itself. On the major one, the allocation or the fault of David Lambourne was that he did not have a written judgment, or rather he left the written judgment wrong after the hearing was completed. But there was really no issue there, because the people who were complaining was in a sense the government and its supporters. And the guy who wrote the letter was the chairman of the party. It's all invented by government to justify when trying to get rid of David. In our view, it's very sad. It's an attempt to try and erode the independence of the judiciary. It's a funny situation because all our judges have all been suspended simply because the government will not respect the judgment of the court, which is not good for democracy.
It's very clear, it would seem, that there's a relationship here between the fact that Tessie Lambourne is the opposition leader. Do you think that has driven the whole thing?
Well, yeah, of course. Totally, because there was never an issue when David was first appointed and Tessie was not yet in Parliament. It only became an issue to the President when she was elected and refused to join his party. In our view, it's an attempt to try and penalize Tessie. So the attack on David is really an attack on Tessie. It's well known that.
As far as I can see, the government hasn't had anything to say about this at this point and hasn't said anything public about it.
No, and the broadcasting service, it was in complete silence. There was nothing out in the community. People are hearing the thing now through social media and by word of mouth. But there was nothing that has been reported on the radio. That, again, is not a surprise because in Parliament, the minister responsible for the broadcasting said that they control the broadcasting the meeting. I'm not sure if what he said was by mistake or by design. But anyway, he said that in Parliament. But that is not new. We all know from the very beginning that is what they do. They never allow anything that is critical of government yet on the radio.
So what sort of understanding is there in the general public about what's going on here? Do people know the actual story?
I'm not sure. But on South Tarawa, Bayshore and South Tarawa, I think there is a good assumption that people are beginning to be aware of what is happening. On South Island, I'm not sure because there was nothing said on the radio about it. And that's why it's very important that we go to South Islands and try to inform the people what in fact has been happening on the issue.
What is happening in terms of the courts? Because they have brought in some judges, and I understand a court of appeal has now been set up using overseas judges again.
Well, yes, they have, but I think they have not yet sit as a court because one of the guys I gathered, I'm not sure, wasn't well. But according to the information we got, the Court of Appeal has been established, but they have not met yet. And one of the issues they're going to consider is the appeal by David. My case is the government is not keen to have the case heard as soon as possible.
Now, the country is due to go to elections. You don't know the election date yet, but presumably that poll is going to be fairly soon.
Yep, that is right. I'm sure that issue will be discussed as well. But my case is the government would try to focus on the bread and butter issues, the promises that have been made in terms of the monetary benefits, because that's the only way they know to get the votes.
Well, one of the peculiarities of politics in your country is that once a president's in, he tends to stay for the maximum period, doesn't he? Do you think that's likely to happen here? Is he likely to get a third term?
Well, I'm not sure. The signs are clear. That's why he can't wait now to go to South Island. The House was ended its meeting on last Friday. Then on Sunday, I guess that he left South Tarawa for Thursday.
You yourself, you'll stand?
Yes, I have talked to my wife and family because initially they said to me that I should not stand at my time. But, I don't know. I've discussed it with them and they said, okay, because I feel I still have, I don't know. I feel I want to be involved in what is happening now. I'm leaving South Tarawa on Monday to my constituency and I'll be staying until the election.
Yes, well, your constituency, of course, bore the brunt of that horrific ferry disaster. Has that been resolved to the satisfaction of the people of Nonus?
I don't know, but I think over time, it's quite a while back now. That was another example of the government trying to avoid the responsibility for what happened. I guess the president is going to my constituency, I think, the next few days to talk to the community. I'm not sure what the people are going to say. They may raise an issue with him when he goes there, but over time, people tend to forget about it. I don't want to make it as an issue in my discussion with the people, unless they raise it.
As cyclone season ends, Pacific communities across the region are now being warned to focus on dengue fever prevention. Samoa is continuing to fight dengue fever, while an outbreak has also been declared in Fiji's Western Division. Alicia Foon spoke with WHO Director of Pacific Technical Support in the South Pacific, Dr. Mark Jacobs, who says prevention is key.
So certainly we're aware that there's a dengue outbreak in the Western Division of Fiji. It's actually that having a dengue outbreak at around this time of the year isn't actually that unusual. Over the last 5 years, the average figures normally show a peak around now. And actually, this year, in terms of the reports coming from our surveillance system, the numbers are a bit lower than last year. It's not actually that unusual. But our support to Fiji, we haven't had any direct requests from Fiji government for specific dengue support so far with this one. But our ongoing support is in areas like laboratory strengthening and disease surveillance strengthening, those sorts of things. Fiji is well used to managing both dengue outbreaks, dengue upswings, and also leptospirosis. They have a good, strong Centre for Disease Control that gets a lot of support from partners like WHO. So they have good systems in place. But of course, if the numbers become more and more unusual, no doubt we'll be getting requests for how WHO and other partners can help. But at this stage, I think the national systems are dealing with it fine. And in fact, other Pacific countries are also seeing an upswing in particularly dengue at the moment as well. And again, that's pretty common for a lot of those other Pacific countries too.
One of those countries is Samoa, with a national dengue fever outbreak that was announced last week. I wanted to ask, what kind of support is WHO providing nationally for Samoa? You know, there's a potential for it to become worse than it is.
Yeah, certainly it's always a concern about dengue. Once you start seeing an upswing, no one can know for certain how high that upswing is going to go. So a lot of the management of dengue is about trying to minimise the number of cases, but also to try to make sure that people are aware of dengue and what they can do to reduce their own risk in terms of cleaning up around the house and things like that, but also being aware of the signs of possible dengue so they get seen by health professionals early, because good management, good early management of dengue can make quite a big difference to somebody's chances of ultimately dying from dengue. But the sort of support that's been provided to Samoa, so there's been assistance with a lot of the risk communication, so the information out to the community around steps that they can take. We've also provided quite a lot of rapid dengue tests. The office in Samoa has arranged for samples to be shipped to the laboratory here in Fiji for confirmatory testing, so that we know not just that it's dengue, but also what type of dengue that it is.
Have there been discussions around prevention and keeping numbers low, or trying to, I guess, attack this as best as they can as a nation? WHO obviously a strong lead helping government organisations and NGOs on the ground. There seems to be a huge national campaign to clean up hotspots and areas. And so practically on the ground, how are you empowering village leaders and community leaders to make a difference in that area?
In Samoa, I think the main contribution from WHO on that is really helping with getting information out, because, informed communities are communities that are able to take action. And so messaging around both the need to be seen by a health professional if somebody's got dengue, but also what people can do around their house, like pick up rubbish that might collect water, tidy up gardens that might collect water, because the mosquitoes that can spread dengue, they're quite comfortable living around people's houses, and you don't need very much water around your house for those dengue-spreading mosquitoes to be able to multiply, which of course then increases the risk to you, increases the risk to your family, increases the risk to your neighbours. I guess it's empowering communities through providing them with good practical information on steps that they can and should be taking. It's important, I think, for people to understand, whether they're people travelling into the Pacific or people already living here, some of the other basic things around the mosquitoes that can spread dengue. One is they tend to be daytime biting mosquitoes. So sometimes people get a bit confused between, they think about some of the malaria messages around evenings and nighttime and things like that. But the dengue mosquitoes bite basically in the early morning around dawn and a couple of hours after, and then for a few hours before sunset. They tend to bite when people are out and about. So the answer to them isn't like bed nets and things like that. The answer to them is both the cleanups, but also doing basic things like wearing long sleeve shirts if you can, wearing long leg coverings if you can, using repellent.
History will be made as Tonga gears up to host its first ever Super Rugby Pacific game. Tonga Rugby Union's interim chief executive officer, Aisia Aholele, says the Moana Pacifica and Highlanders clash at the Uwhaiva Park in the Saturday heat will be interesting. Elias Satora reports.
For the first time, Tongan fans will get to watch a Super Rugby game at home this weekend. Aholele says there's a lot of excitement in the lead-up to the match.
Our preparation is coming along, the excitement is building, people are running around just doing last-minute things and making sure that this game is a spectacle, and it's the first time for Tonga to host a Super Rugby game.
Aholele says hosting the game has many positives for the Island Kingdom and is a sign of confidence across the board for them.
This sort of gives us a real boost, for our players and our programs, to aspire to be part of the best and in the best competitions in the world. It gives us some confidence that we can host these games. It gives us confidence that our pathways are in the right direction. But for us, in different levels, it's very positive.
The impact on the game and its growth towards a more professional direction is going to be massive, Aholele added.
Especially from a development point of view for the players, it's good for them, the local players. It gives them pathway direction for to the professional game, and also from us administrators to, it grows the nation and the organisation itself for the Tonga Rugby Union, and seeing a more professional direction for rugby in Tonga.
Meanwhile, Moana Pacifica head coach Fa'alongo Tanaumanga says they are proud to be able to play a Super Rugby Pacific game in one of their home nations.
Oh, we're excited, yeah, 100%. First time that we'll be playing, that Moana Pacific will be playing in Tonga. First time there'll ever be a Super Rugby game in Tonga, so that's something to be very proud of. And hopefully, they've seen what the Drua fans, the Fijians are here, and how they support their home team.
The Highlanders, who play some of their home games under the roof at the Forsyth Bar Stadium, are wary of the Nukolofa hit, since Saturday's game will be at 2 p.m. Tonga time.
Go back onto the attack. Nice little ball back and field. Tui Falutu gets it away to Pulu. Augustine Pulu gets it.
Assistant coach Tom Donnelly said the game would be another test for the side, but they have been practicing with wet balls in preparation for the slippery ball expected in the humid conditions. Tonga's Crown Prince, Tuputoa Ulkalala, will be the chief guest at the rugby clash, with a sellout crowd of 10,000 expected to watch the battle. Both teams will be chasing a win as the fight for the top 8 intensifies. The Highlanders are currently sitting at 8th spot with 15 points, while Moana Pacifica are 1 point behind them.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnzi.com/programs. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, to farce 3-4.